This is Michael T., and I want to thank you for being here with us this morning. So, to all of our listeners, I would invite you to go to bookpartypodcast.com. That is bookpartypodcast.com. Hit that subscribe tab on top. Scroll down to the icon of your choice where you can find us on one of your favorite platforms, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Audacity. You can download one of those, follow us there, and please don't forget to sign up for our newsletter to get the latest information on our upcoming shows. Today, I would like to introduce to you our guest, Jonathan Cerruto, his book, Joshua Bane and the Five Watchtowers. Jonathan Cerruto is a Canadian-born author and lyricist who grew up in Italy and moved to London in 2012. He has a passion for arts, fashion design, and storytelling, and has been writing since 2005. He graduated in Milan as a fashion designer, but his biggest passion is writing words and stories that inspire and empower people. He has created content for big platforms like YouTube and other social media, and has written educational books for many years. He is also a published author and lyricist, having written songs for an international artist, published his first novel in the UK. His debut novel, Joshua Bane and the Five Watchtowers, is a thrilling story of dark and light, calm and chaos, disappearances and murders. Jonathan, why don't you take it from here, fill in some of the blanks a bit, and tell our listeners about yourself?
Hello, Michael. Yeah, thank you anyway for having me today. My name is Jonathan Cerruto. I was born in Canada, lived and raised in Italy. Then I moved to the UK in London, where I basically worked as a business manager. And at the same time, I was trying to finish those notes that I started writing many, many years ago. I'm an author, I'm a lyricist, and as you said, I published my first novel with House Publishing in the UK, London, and now I am about to publish my sixth book, part of the fantasy saga entitled Joshua Bane and the Five Watchtowers.
That's fantastic. So, when you first started writing, were you a self-publishing author, or did you always go with an agency, or how'd that work?
So this is the story, basically. I started writing Joshua Bane's story when I was 12 years old. I was very, very young. I lived in a very toxic household, in a very toxic environment. So for me, writing stories was a way to escape from those episodes of violence and abusive, actually, as I said, environment. I signed a contract with a vanity housing publishing in the UK. I paid some money for them to publish my first novel, but I wasn't happy with the way they were treating my book, the way they were marketing my book. So from the second book onwards, I am just a self-published author.
Okay. So did you self-publish those, or did you just go ahead and continue on with the...
I self-published my first book up to the sixth book that I'm going to publish most likely next month. So I'm using KDP, Amazon, and other platforms like Draft2Digital or Ingram Spark. Those platforms that are free of charge and helps authors to make their work more visible to the world.
I understand. Okay, take us to the point in time in your writings, because if you started writing when you were 12, you've been writing for a really long time.
Yes.
But in this latest book, let's just go to the latest novel.
Yeah.
Take us to a point in time which is probably your worst author moment. Take us to that time.
Well, my worst moment was when I had to keep working as a manager in a store in London, dealing with customers. in retail, and at the same time, I wanted to finish writing the book, but the time was really tight. I had zero time, and working 14 hours per day, 6 days per week. And when I had my day off, I wanted to rest. So I would say that my worst moment was fighting the tiredness and being so busy and not able to finish the book in that time frame that I did set myself in. So that is the worst time, and the worst moment is me as an author, having no time to write, let's say.
Right, because you had to work so much, you just didn't have the time to write that you wanted to write.
Exactly. I don't know if you've been to London, but I lived in London for almost 12 years, working as a manager in a store. And it's every day, all day, running, even because you need to get the public transport to go to work because you cannot afford to live in the city. So I used to live 1 hour and a half out of the city. So to be in store at 8 o'clock in the morning, I had to wake up at 5. So there were times and there were days that I wake up in the dark and go back home in the dark. So, and
Wow.
plus the exhaustion, I was exhausted. So there was very little time to write.
Right,
But
I
I
can
found it.
understand that. I can understand that. You have to work, you have to earn.
Yeah, there's bills knocking at the door. You cannot say to bills like, "Hey, listen, I'm trying to publish a book, so wait for me." It doesn't work like that. So I had to
Yeah, so
work like
unfortunately,
everybody else.
this took much longer to complete the book than you wanted it to take.
Exactly. It took
Yeah, I
me
can see that.
the first book. It took me up to 10 years, more or less. Of course, on and
Wow.
off, but it took me almost 10 years.
Wow. Well, okay, so next, let's take us to a point in time where you had probably the greatest epiphany moment that you could have had, no matter what you were doing, whether it was driving, whether it was just starting to go to bed, whether it was taking a shower, I don't care what it was. And all of a sudden, this great light bulb went off in your head, and you were like, wow, I have got to write this down right now. Take us to a point in time where that happened.
So it was 2019. I was in store. I was serving a customer. This sounds funny, but it's actually a true life story. Suddenly, I couldn't move the left side of my body. Somehow, I froze there on the shop floor. And the next day, I kept telling myself it was just headache pain, muscle pain because of the stress. But after a month and a half, I went to the GP, and the GP found something on my spine, and it was a tumor. I had to go under surgery. It took me 8 months to recover, and that was a light bulb. I was wrecked and drenched by anxiety, by stress, and the main reason was because I was doing something that I wasn't enjoying it at all. And it was that moment that I said, I need to do something with my life. I need to do something that fulfills my soul. And it was that time that I decided to quit my full-time job. And I promised myself that I would just write, even if the money is little. I don't care, I said to myself in 2019. But see, I believe in the universe. I believe in manifestation. And I think that the universe sends you messages or sends you through a specific path for a reason. And in that period, the pandemic hit. So the store closed, everything shut down. And that was the bulb light. That was the moment, the ha-ha moment for me, which was, now I can write full time. And in that period, I finally was able to finish writing the book that I started in 2005. I was able to find an editor that was able to help me to edit the book. I found a beta reader that was able to read the book for me and give comments on how to adjust and polish the book. And I published the book in 2019 with Vanity Publishing Housing. I signed a contract, as I mentioned before, and that is the first book that I published, Joshua Bane and the Five Watchtowers. And that
So
was the biggest moment.
in a way, the pandemic lockdowns, or whatever you want to call them, were an extreme burden to a lot of people.
For me, it was a blessing.
Almost a blessing for you, because it allowed you to go ahead and start writing the way you wanted to write.
Yes.
Without the distractions, without having to go anywhere, and you could just sit down and write.
Even because I couldn't move.
Yeah, so, you can turn that around, and it actually makes a blessing for some, and help you turn it into a success instead of a burden.
Yeah.
So, hey, you can take a blessing out of that one, where most people, it's not a blessing for them,
I know, and I'm sorry, because I don't want to offend anyone, because I know that people died and people suffered in that period of time. But in my personal experience, it was a blessing, because I somehow was forced, even if I did it with pleasure, but I was forced to sit down and pursue my dream, which was publishing the first book.
Sure. Well, there's a lot of other people, too, that got to work from home and not have to buy gas to travel to work and back and things like that. So there's little tiny blessings for that. But it was a huge blessing for you to be able to just write. And, I can see that. I can understand it. All right. So let's move to this one. What is, and this is about today, what is the one thing that you're the most excited about or fired up about today?
I am excited about my next publishing project, which is going to happen next month. As I mentioned before, I'm going to publish my 6th book, because now I am a full-time writer. I don't have side jobs, because I'm able to provide for my family and sustain myself through my writing. So I'm really, really excited for actually 2 projects. I correct myself right now. I'm also a lyricist, and there is an artist here in Italy who asked me to write 2 songs for him. And he's in the recording studio right now that is recording the songs. So my excitement is because of these 2 songs that are gonna come out at the end of August, and the publishing of my 6th book.
That's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Again, this is Michael T., and I thank you for being here with us this morning. To all of our listeners, I would invite you to go to bookpartypodcast.com. That is bookpartypodcast.com. Hit that subscribe tab on top. Scroll down to the icon of your choice, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Audacity, and you can find us on one of your favorite platforms. You can download us, follow us there, and please don't forget to sign up for our newsletter to get the latest information on upcoming shows. All right, Jonathan, we're entering the lightning round, and it's 4 pointed questions with 4 pointed answers. The first one you've actually already answered, because it wasn't holding you back. Normally, I would ask you what was holding you back from becoming an author in the first place, and I think you've already answered that one.
Yes, life was holding me back. Bills, everyday life was holding me back. That was the main reason I was still not ready to pursue my dreams. I was also scared, to be honest. I was scared what people would say, because as you mentioned before, I'm a graduate in fashion design. I created collections. I worked for Moschino for 6 months. So people were somehow expecting something different from me. Nowadays, even now, people text me, sends me DMs, asking me why you're not creating fashion or anymore. My specialization was designing shoes. So people nowadays ask me for a design, shoe design. So the expectation of others was holding me also back.
Right. Okay.
So yeah,
It's actually a common answer. There's a lot of authors out there with all these books and everything, and the expectation of you. Why would someone want to read what I have to write? And it's a common fear, and I hear it a lot. And it's you're real. There's no competition with them. The only competition you have is yourself.
it's with ourselves, exactly.
That's the only competition you have, because your writing comes from you. It's your voice, not theirs. And, that's all it is. And it's a very common fear, though. Okay, the next pointed question. In your writing, what was the best advice you have ever received?
So while I was in London, I had the chance to study creative writing in college. It was a year course. And my professor of creative writing told me to not edit, because my habit was to write, stop, edit, and go and move forward. He told me to not do that because somehow you lose the flow, you lose the feeling of what you're writing. So he told me and he taught me to not edit while you're writing. So write everything that you have to write, he told me, and then at the end, when you feel that the book is finished, you can start editing. And that changed me and changed my skills very, very in a nice way, in the best way, I would say.
That's really good advice. And I actually had somebody that their advice somebody gave them was, because they were having that problem kind of thing too, right? Their advice was given to them is write drunk. Don't worry about punctuation. Don't worry about sentence structure. Don't worry about any of that. Just write.
Yes.
Just write. When you're done, go back and edit sober.
Yes.
You
cannot
just get
edit
it on
a
the paper.
Page. Yes, exactly.
Just get it on the paper. Don't try to write something and then, then I got to go fix this. Oh, I got to go fix that. Don't worry about that. And it makes sense. And it's kind of going along the lines of what you're talking about there. Just write. Get it on the paper.
Just write. At the end, you cannot edit a blank page. So just go with the flow.
Exactly. All right. Share one of your personal habits that contributes to your success.
To stay positive. I have the good habit to not read comments, to not read feedbacks. I know that it could sound weird, but comments sometimes can let you down and put you down and let you and distract you from your goal. So I have the habit to not read comments. I have the habit to not read feedbacks, good or bad. I don't care. Because sometimes, you have to, and you receive emails from people. I have the habit to, and I do that with really, really, sometimes struggling to change the negative into positive. I know that it sounds cliche and sounds very universal from Miss Universe, but yeah, I have the habit to transform all the negative into positive. Because as I mentioned earlier, I didn't have a nice childhood. I lived in a very abusive environment. So I've been into dark places, and I know what it means to be in that dark place. I've suffered from depression, anxiety for a very, very long time. And I promised myself that I won't fall into that black hole again. So I have the habit to not read comments and listen to people, especially when the criticism is not constructive.
Once your book is written and it's published and it's out there, it's already done.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
there. What are you going to do? It's not like
Exactly.
you're going to say, okay, let me pull it back and just for you, I'll change this little. No, you can't do that. I interviewed
And
a man named Roy Lance, was his last name. And one of his things that he teaches is to take anything that's negative in your life, anything that's negative in your life, and get rid of it.
yeah,
Because it's going to do nothing but drag you down. If it's negative,
exactly.
just get rid of it, no matter what it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
And it makes sense. So, but once your book is written, it's published, it's out there, what do the comments matter? Right?
It matters, of course, because you have shared something with the world, but people's opinion, it doesn't count much because people have their own opinion.
Well, they're
They
going to
might
have.
like it. Exactly. They might like it, they might hate it. It's part of the game, and I just focus on the positive. It
Yeah.
happens, of course, that people send me DMs saying that my books are dull. For example, I received a message 2 days ago from someone on TikTok saying the cover of my book is dull. And for a split second, it was almost about to get to me. But then what I thought was, Jonathan, you need to get this advice, this feedback, and change it and use it as a fuel. What I did the next day, I contacted the cover design that helps me to do the covers of my books, and I released a special edition with a new cover. So I transformed that criticism, because in that case was, from my opinion, a constructive criticism, even if this person was wanted to sell their service. But I got that experience and I changed it in a positive one. So
Right.
it's what I try to do, what I tend to do.
Right. Okay, well, let's go on to the next question. Share with our listeners now this is for the book you just finished, one internet resource that you use when you write.
I just mentioned the covers. I use Canva and Photoshop, if that is the question, to create my covers. I also, because I write high fantasy novels, and I like to let the reader dive into the story, and I like to add images in the books. So, for example, I use Intracraft, which is basically an interactive map that you can create yourself. And I like to do that in my books. So those are my two. I know that you mentioned just one, but those are my two favorite platforms to use while I'm writing and while I'm creating my books.
Yeah, a lot of people use Canva. A lot do. Okay, Jonathan, we're going to end up here with I'm sorry, not lightning. We just did that. The grand finale.
Yeah.
And what I want you to do with the grand finale is maybe give a couple of people a couple of instances where people can find your book, maybe get in touch with you. But what I want you to do here is to tell about your book.
Joshua Bane and the Five Watchtowers is a story of a brother and sister. They are abandoned by their biological parents, and they find themselves in an orphanage. They live together up to 8 years old, but Ashley, which is Joshua's sister, is adopted by a woman, who is going to reveal herself as the villain of the story. And once she adopts Ashley, she changes her features, hair color, and she wipes the memory of her brother, Joshua. It's a fantasy story. It's a story of hope. That's the message that I want to portray with my reader, with my writing. It's a story of empowerment and hope. It's very dear to me because all my writing comes from a place of heart. Even if it's a fantasy story, it's based on my personal experience. I imagined and I envisioned Joshua's story when I was 12 years old. I was so attached to this character that when I was 18 years old, I wanted to change my name from Jonathan to Joshua, because, as I said, it's very dear to my heart. It's a true story. It's a sort of autobiography story, but of course, I don't have powers. But yeah, it's a very nice fan. Of course, I'm biased, but it's a very very nice story. Uh, and what I like the most about my books is that it's like if I'm telling a story to a 5 years old person.
Okay.
There's nothing too complicated. It's something like it's something easy to read. Uh, of course, that is what the readers are telling me. It's like if I am sitting beside them and telling them the story. It's in POV and in third person, because I like to combine these two aspects in my writing. And yeah, it's very dear to me because it's a story based on my life experience. Uh, this way, people can rely also on in the story. Um, there's of course there's a key part in the books, which is Joshua, who is a part of the LGBTQ plus community, um, which I am, who I am, of course, as well. And that part of the book is very important to me because that comes into place the empowerment. We live in a society where everyone is judged by their exterior, but people forget that we bleed the same color, we cry the same tears, and we suffer and we are hurt all the same way. So my books are also to those who are feeling down, who are not feeling that they belong, and that is the main message of my books: hope, love, and empowerment.
Absolutely fantastic. Yeah. And that goes something to do with labels, and I labels is one thing I don't like. So labels belong on cans, you know,
Exactly.
not on people. So
Exactly.
no, hope, love, and empowerment. That's absolutely fantastic, and I'm sure it's an absolutely fantastic book. Jonathan, we thank you so much for being with us here today,
Thank
opening
you.
up to us, and I'm sure the listeners appreciate that too. Sounds like a fantastic book. Again, this is Michael T., and I thank you for being with us this morning. To all our listeners, I would invite you to go to bookpartypodcast.com. That is bookpartypodcast.com. Hit that subscribe tab on top. Scroll down to the icon of your choice where you'll find us on one of your favorite platforms, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or Audacity, where you can download it and follow us there. Please don't forget to sign up for our newsletter to get the latest information on our upcoming shows. Book Party Podcast is owned and powered by MTM Legacy Publishing, LLC. This is Michael T., and I'm signing off.